Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana makes car selling fast and easy from start to finish. Enter your license plate or VIN and get a real offer in seconds, down to the penny. If you accept, Carvana will come pick up your car from your driveway. Or you can drop it off at one of our car vending machines. Either way, you get paid instantly. It's fast, transparent, and 100% online. Car selling that saves your time. That's Carvana.
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the Dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like expecting the leadership of a team captain on the football field, but getting a sea captain. You wouldn't settle for just anything for your team. Shouldn't it be the same for your insurance? So don't settle for just any insurance when you can go with a leader. State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
All right, we are live. What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Falcons Podcast with me, your host, Garrett Chapman. Give me a follow at GChapATL on Twitter. Stay fully up to date on everything that we have going on over there at Falcons on SI. You can also head on over there. Just check it out. Just Google Falcons on SI. But make sure to like the video and share it with your friends so they can get in on some of this Falcons discussion. And wherever you're getting your podcast, thank you so much for joining us. Spotify, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere. Doesn't matter. We're glad you're here. Thank you so much. We got a good show set up for you today. We're fresh off of an early Week 5 bye week. I'll tell you why that may not be quite as bad as some people think. It's actually what I've heard from a lot of folks is that the Week 5 sucks. I'll tell you why that may not be true. We're also going to dig into some thoughts on where the Falcons stand coming out of the bye week. And then what's up with some of these injuries discussions, just how they stand health-wise, because we finally caught up with head coach Raheem Morris. He gave us a couple of answers finally. So we're looking forward to hopefully bringing some of those to you here on the podcast today. Also, taking your questions. So make sure to drop those in the comments. We'll get to those as we see them throughout the show. And if you drop a super comment, of course, if you're over on YouTube, that's the number one way to jump straight up to the front of the line. So if there's something that you want to know, something that you want to find out, something you want to say, and you want to make sure that I acknowledge it, drop that super like or super comment, and I will get to it as soon as I can. I see a bunch of people are starting to jump in already. Kiera Possible, hey, hello. We got Play Stats. What up? What's good, GC? What's up, man? How are you? Welcome in. So James comes in, saw you strolling in on Raheem's press conference. Yeah, that was me. That was definitely me. We were in the locker room talking to some players, and they got started a little early. So, oh well. We kind of got messed with by Raheem Morris. He was he was saying a couple of things too. It's fun, but by the end of that, so we were having some good time. Michael Roquila, what's up, my man? How are you? But I do see a bunch of people starting to jump into the podcast. So welcome. We're talking all things Atlanta Falcons. So let's start here. I saw a request come through. Somebody hit me in a DM, just said, what are some of these advanced stats? So I'm more than happy to jump in and answer some of those questions. So let's go through. We'll start with the offense. So through 5 weeks, this is where the Atlanta Falcons stand. So 7th in total offense, 362 yards per game. They got 12th in passing offense with 226 yards passing per game. 6th in rushing offense, 136.5 per game, and 26th in points per game. Of course, a lot of that has to do with the lull against the Carolina Panthers that still looms over this unit, but it's also that bit of a lull against the Minnesota Vikings as well. I mean, that's just one of the realities of scoring 0 points and then not, scoring when you get to the red zone. But I will say last week's revitalizing that 34-point barrage that they had against the Commanders. That really does help. But as far as the advanced metrics, the 7th in total offense, that's great. I think that's okay. It's good. Look, because you're picking up yards, you're finding some success, but EPA, so expected points added, is not very kind to the Falcons. They're 22nd in EPA per play. They're 22nd in EPA per pass. And believe it or not, they're actually 16th in EPA per rush. So damn near like smack dab in the middle of the NFL in terms of successful rushing. They've been a success rate of 42.5%, which again is 16th in the NFL. Not awesome. Like it's not exactly where it needs to be. But again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that you go down 30 points to the Carolina Panthers. You're not scoring points and you're not throwing the ball effectively against the Minnesota Vikings. And I'd say that more performances like you have against the Washington Commanders is going to help you, build some of these numbers a little bit. But one thing I do want to give a quick shout out to is this offensive line, because they're 12th in pressure rate and 2nd in sacks allowed. That tells me that effectively this unit's doing its job. It's doing what it needs to do here. And that was going to be a big concern for this team coming into the season, especially in the wake of the injury to Caleb McGarry. Elijah Wilkinson's done a very good job. But the number one thing for this, and I mean, I mentioned this in the last podcast, and I'll say it again here, it's the fact that this unit doesn't have a lot of consistency. Not the offensive line, the offense in general. They need to start finding some of that. They need to build some of that out. And that's just par for the course, I'd say, with the young team that you have at the quarterback position, at wide receiver. You've got some young guys across this team, but especially at the quarterback position, you're not going to have a lot of consistency. That's just one of the realities of having a young quarterback. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't believe in this guy. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have strong outbursts and have big games or even big moments. It just means you're going to have some of these lulls. And I'm going to tell you why a little bit later in the podcast, why that's so important for this team just moving forward. But as far as like getting back to what this team can do here at the bye week, consistency was a buzzword, but what does that actually mean? How do you actually get back to your roots? Well, you do it by getting back to your roots. You give the ball to Bijan Robinson. You lean on Tyler Algier. You get tough yards out of these two. And Bijan specifically, I mean, of course, you assume he's going to be healthy the whole way. But maybe he doesn't maintain this progression just as far as his total yards are concerned, but he's on pace for 2,400 yards, guys. 2,400 yards. That's unbelievable. In fact, that's the second most in NFL history. Chris Johnson, he had 2,500. But it's also the fact that he's averaging fewer touches per game. That's the important thing, because what was the one thing that we talked about all offseason, all throughout the summer, all as we built up to camp? The number one thing for Bijan Robinson was his explosiveness. You just get hit a lot. And that actually where you touch the ball more, but you get hit less. That's kind of what we saw with Saquon Barkley last year. That's effectively what happened, right? And that's what we're seeing here with Bijan Robinson. Now, it's not quite as glaring, right? So he's averaging one fewer touch per game, but I mean, over the course of a season, that's potentially 17 hits fewer that he takes in a season. But it's something that kind of you'll see kind of build out throughout the course of the year, right? But it's the fact that his yards per reception has more than doubled. I mean, you have, and that certainly will help by the fact that you have a 50-yard touchdown reception, and then you have a 69-yard reception earlier. That's just, that kind of thing helps you, right? But you don't want to overuse the guy, because this is someone who you need to make sure stays healthy. You don't want to put too much on him, because a running back in particular is somebody that if you take too many hits, they pile up and they stack and stack and stack. But this is a guy who's exceptional at taking care of his body and making sure that he's in the right spot physically heading into every game. But that's the number one thing, is make sure you're running the ball really effectively. Number two is the explosive passes down the field. You saw some of that come back against the Commanders, but outside of that, it really hasn't been there. And you saw that really come to a head against the Carolina Panthers. I think a lot of that has a lot to do with the health of Darnell Mooney, but you can't be that reliant on one player. You have to be able to get these guys open and get them the ball down the field. Now, I'd say the termination of Ike Hilliard, I mean, I don't know if that's going to continue to play through. You're going to need to find that against the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football, I'll tell you that much, because I mean, this is not a great rush defense that you're going to be facing in the Bills, but this is also not a great secondary either. You know, people have been able to take advantage of this group in the past. I haven't actually seen their numbers for this year. I need to go double check those. But I do know that their rush defense has left a little bit to be desired. But the last big thing is you have to make sure that this red zone offense is clicking. It's 26th in the NFL, 46.2 rate in the red zone. We talked about how they're number 7 in yards per game. They're 26th in points. That's the biggest difference between why your EPA is so much lower than your yardage production is. Because you have a 0-point game and then you have a field goal game. You know, so it matters in terms of that, but we'll see what they can actually do just as they build out some consistency. But that's your number one thing is you have to build out some consistency. You need it. You have to have it. Let's roll back through here. So Kira Possible says, who do you think QB spies Josh? I don't know if a lot of people have been doing that. I would say that you're going to have somebody in the middle of the field. I wouldn't be surprised if it's somebody like Caden Ellis or something, but you actually see a lot of man coverage here against Josh Allen, just in general. Believe it or not, that's just what these guys like to do. Like the man rates against him are much higher than your standard numbers in the NFL. But we'll see what they end up doing with it as far as game plans and everything else like that. They're not going to tell us a whole lot, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see Caden Ellis kind of play in that role. But Divine Diablo is somebody who, I mean, he's very good at patrolling the middle of the field, just in that center, in that dig route area. And it wouldn't be all that surprising. That's a good question, though, Kiera. Michael Baxter comes through, says, good evening, Garrett. Good evening. Happy Tuesday to you, my friend. Kiera Possible says, what are the Bills' defense good and bad at? Well, I actually just dove into one of those big things. I mean, specifically, they're very good or they're very bad against in run defense. A lot of that has to do with the fact that Ed Oliver's not there. He hasn't played since week 1. That's just something that you need to stay on top of. And I mean, health is always a big thing, but the Falcons have a chance to potentially take advantage of this. But actually, let's take a look at this. You want to know about the defense in particular. I actually have some of these numbers pulled up. I just got to get to them. But in terms of advanced metrics, EPA per play, starting there. Let's see. My computer is moving pretty slowly. There they are. Okay. So they're actually 16th in the NFL. So they're actually right there in the middle of the pack in terms of advanced analytics. Estimated points added per pass defensively. They're a little bit better defensively against the pass than they have been in the past. I know the secondary has been a bit of a worry spot for them, just to answer your question, Kiera. But this year it appears that they're doing a little bit better, but it's also, I think that has a lot to do with the fact that their run defense has left a lot to be desired. But the Falcons should have some ability to kind of get after these guys. I think this is going to be a high scoring game. That's my expectation, assuming that you're not going to have the roller coaster. If you have the Michael Penix who showed up at Carolina, I think the Falcons, it'll be an ugly game. It's going to get very, very, very ugly. But if the Michael Penix who showed up against, let's just say the Washington Commanders or even the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, then you're actually going to have a really good opportunity in this game, right? But you're going to have to be able to match the scoring, and the defense is going to have to step up because this is by far their biggest challenge of the season, like not even remotely close. But just speaking of this defense, I mean, this is a group, so we want to get into some of these advanced analytics. Defense is currently in first place. Total defense, 244 yards allowed per game. They're first place in passing defense, 135 yards allowed through the air. Right there in the middle of the road in terms of rushing defense, 16th in the NFL, and then 15th in points allowed per game. Now, the important thing to keep in mind here is, I mean, total defense is fine. Yardage stats may not always be the best way to look at how good a defense is, especially when the Falcons have been kind of struggling in terms of starting field position defensively. They're allowing short fields. So that's one of the reasons why you see points allowed per game a lot higher, 21.5, than the first place total defense would suggest. Bad starting field position, people end up getting a field goal, or maybe they just play with a short field and it's easier for them to go get 6, right? But as far as the advanced metrics go, they're 9th in EPA per play allowed, 5th through the air EPA per pass and 27th in EPA per rush. But let me tell you this much. They've only given up the 5th most runs of 10 plus yards. Like, this is a Falcons defense who admittedly is significantly improved, but they're not all the way a finished product, right? Then one of the number one ways you can look at this is pressure rates. So weeks 1 and 2, one of the best pressure rates in all of the NFL. Weeks 3 and 4, not so much, right? So that's one thing that you can look at. It's Marcus Mariota and guys like that who wants to get out and run. They're going to cause more of a problem, but there's no real excuse for you to struggle in the way that you did against Bryce Young. It's just you were allowing a lot of rushing, right? And it's just time and down and distance in game situations and things like that. But defensively, I mean, the heart, mind, fist of Jeff Ulbrich in this new scheme has been about as good as you could possibly hope it could be. But again, this is your biggest test of the season coming up with Josh Allen. Baker Mayfield, I'd say you did pretty well. You did really well up until about halftime, up until the special teams kind of let you down and got the Bucs kind of rolling in that game. But you get the Buffalo Bills this week, and then you get and then it's the 49ers right after that, right? But this is a spot where you're going to have to keep Josh Allen in the pocket, right? That's going to be one of the most important things. But I mean, here, Michael Ronquillo actually comes in here and says, contain James Cook for the Buffalo Bills offense. Yeah, James Cook, a lot of people have kind of glossed over the fact that this guy has been one of the best running backs in the NFL, specifically in the AFC. He's right up there with Jonathan Taylor and those other guys in the AFC. The guy's playing out of his mind, right? And if you have those two kind of running buck wild, this Falcons defense is going to be tested just on the ground. And ultimately, like, if you want to get into some early thoughts here about the Bills and the Falcons, it's going to come down to who stops the run better. That's a big factor in this game. Can the Falcons run the ball? The Bills giving up 145 yards per game rushing, 5th most in the NFL this season. Bills have the worst defense in the NFL in terms of explosive runs. They've given up, I don't know what was the exact number. Hold on. Let me make sure that I'm exactly right on this, because this run defense, they get 10 plus carries. They're right there with the Miami Dolphins. They've given up 27, right? I wrote down the number 27. And I was like, no way that's right. No way that's right. Let me go double check that. That's how bad it's been in terms of rush defense for the Buffalo Bills. Not great. Not great. But look, Falcons have a chance to take advantage of that fact. But
Experience a membership that backs your business journey with American Express Business Platinum. Earn 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, enjoy a welcome offer of 200,000 points after you spend $20,000 on purchases on the card within your first 3 months of membership. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
Gold Bond knows that every glow up starts with radiant skin. So choose Gold Bond Cocoa Butter Glow for a body lotion that's clinically shown to give you smooth, glowing skin. But don't just take our word for it. 88% of people who tried Gold Bond Cocoa Butter Glow saw glowing skin in just 1 day. Gold Bond Cocoa Butter Glow. Nourish your skin. Reveal your glow. Buy now on Amazon.
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to help you make the most of your summer with Michelob Ultra, a superior light beer worth playing for. Play for it with the guys when you're competing to see who can sink more birdies on the golf course, because winning tastes even better with Ultra on the line. Play for Ultra. Fill your fridge with Michelob Ultra this summer. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Big news. Sephora is now on Uber Eats. So if you find yourself facing a beauty emergency, like needing a last-minute gift, or you're just out of your favorite mascara, again, don't panic. We got you. Order now and get $10 off on Sephora orders of $50 or more on the Uber Eats app. Order now. Offer ends October 30th. 1 order per customer. Additional terms apply. See app for availability. Delivery fees may apply.
Tops of the fact that the Falcons have, a bit of a light box, and you're going to be, they've shown that they're able to get run on. All right, so you had some explosive runs that you gave up against the Commanders. You had a steady dose of it against the Carolina Panthers, right? Now you're facing the best rushing attack that you faced likely all season. It's going to be a big test here, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the Falcons do that. But one other thing, though, so that's our advanced metrics. That's everything else. My name is Garrett Chapman. This is the Falcons Podcast. We are live on a bunch of different platforms, so thank you to everyone who's jumping in. We've up to 50, 75 folks across all of our platforms, Facebook, Twitter, on YouTube as well. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're new here. We got a lot of new faces, and I'm very excited for everybody to jump in. Hit the like button. I really appreciate it. Any and all support is appreciated. But if you have any questions, any comments, anything else that you want to see or talk about here on the show, I will be taking your questions and comments and everything else throughout the course. So just drop them in there, and then we'll kind of go from there. And I'll give you kind of an update on where this team stands and everything else just coming out of the bye week. All right. So we hit our advanced metrics. We hit on a couple of early thoughts, just kind of like blending all of that in there. But then as far as where this team stands coming out of the bye week, are they going to be a playoff team? Are the Falcons a playoff team? I kind of go back and forth. I tend to say yes. Next gen stats give the Falcons a 40% chance of making the postseason. 40%. Not terrible. Not great. It's fine. Middle of the road, sitting in 10th place in the NFC right now. But it's also because, you had the early bye week, right? And a lot of people complained that the Falcons had the early bye week. A lot of people were very upset. But Jeremy Fowler in ESPN, he actually had an interesting thought process with all of this. And he actually goes through and calculates every single winning percentage of a team going back the last couple of years based off of when their bye weeks are. Now, a lot of that has to do with the fact that you have a handful of, I think it's 2 teams a week, 3-4 teams a week who have a bye week. And I mean, it's going to be heavily swayed by who those teams are, right? So last year you have let's say the LA Chargers, and it was the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, those 2 teams are pretty damn good, right? But if you look at what the overarching record is going back the last couple of years, Falcons, they're in a pretty good spot. Teams who have that week 5 bye have a winning percentage of 56.7%. Now, that puts you right at about 7.5 wins for the remainder of the season. So that means that you might get somewhere between 9 or 10 wins. Is that enough for the postseason? Okay, that might be. Very well might be. And you also pair into the fact that Falcons are getting into the meat of their schedule. This is the underbelly, if you will, but not before you have to go through the slog, right? So your next 4 games, you got the Buffalo Bills, Monday Night Football. Ooh, doggy. Then it's the San Francisco 49ers on the road on Sunday Night Football. Oh boy. If you can get out of that 1-1, I think you're in pretty good shape. Then it's the Miami Dolphins. You need to win that game. Then it's the New England Patriots. 1-3 is not the end of the world. It's also not the best situation, but 2-2, I feel like you can do that. I feel like 2-2 is possible with that. So that would put you at 4-4. Then it's the Colts in Germany. That's going to be tough. I mean, you're going to have to keep up with this team. Let's say 4-5 there, right? Then it's next 3 games. You have the Panthers, Saints, and Jets. You got to win all 3 of those. It's 7-5. That's a little win streak right there. Then it's the Seahawks, Buccaneers, Cardinals on the road, Rams, and Saints. I think 3-2 is possible there. That's you at 10-7. 10-7 is enough for this team to make the playoffs. And ultimately, that's what this team needs to do. Make the playoffs. Because that is the charge. The team is talented enough. I just rolled through all these numbers, all these stats, everything else. They're good enough to do it. They just have to put some wins together, and they have to start stacking wins more effectively. And that means don't throw out stinkers like you did against the Carolina Panthers. That's the unacceptable crap that's going to get coaches fired and players cut and traded and moved on from. You can't do that kind of thing, right? So this is a team who I feel like everything is in front of them. Everything, you have the ability to do it. And if you can get to that 7.5 win, great. And then we're talking about this team potentially doing something in the postseason. You just need to keep pace with the Buccaneers, though. What else happens in the NFC? I think is also going to have a lot of a lot to do with all of that. But based off of the way that the Buccaneers have been playing, it doesn't seem like you're going to catch them. Now, people said the exact same thing about the Bucs and the Falcons last year. Falcons end up folding down the stretch and they end up with a losing record. Now, long way to go. We got a long way to go. But these are teams last year. Let's just look at the teams last year. You have the Eagles and you have the Chargers. Chargers realized they need to start throwing the ball more and they need to put the ball in Herbert's hand, and they started winning a lot more games that helped them fuel a playoff run. Raheem Morris said as the Falcons were going into the bye week that's a completely different Eagles team than the one that he played before they started their bye week. Was that week 3 or 4 of last year? It was a completely different football team. Maybe it was week 2. It's week 2. Completely different football team. So teams are able to reset early. Now, late season buys, you're able to recalibrate. You can rest. You can get healthy. But does it really have that much of an impact? I guess we'll see. But I would say that the team is in pretty good shape moving into this bye week. Just looking at this schedule, looking at where this team is right now, most of the things that they need to fix are things that are within them, right? But as far as that health, so I mentioned the health. I do want to go through some of these last couple of things. And if you have questions, let me know. I'm happy to jump in and answer those as they come in. But as far as the Falcons injury updates, the biggest one, the number one thing, of course, is AJ Terrell. Raheem Morris said that he is very confident that he's going to be back. Just reading the tea leaves with Raheem Morris, it's pretty consistent that, this is one where he sounded like he was a lot more confident, right? And that's very important here for this one because obviously you're going to be playing a lot of man here against the Buffalo Bills. And so having AJ Terrell after D. Alford kind of regressed a little bit against the Commanders. He had a couple of bad situations that he was in just in general in that game. But Terrell's health, he appears to be healthy. He'll be practicing throughout the week. I would expect he goes in with a questionable tag, but then ends up playing. Darnell Mooney, he and Kadero Hodge both also have some soft tissue issues. Kadero Hodge with his groin. Darnell Mooney is dealing with something in his hamstring. I just don't feel like those two are going to play. That's just my gut feeling. I would say that they're going to be evaluated throughout the week, I think is the terminology that Raheem Morris used, but it just doesn't feel very likely. But the other big news from today is Taquan Graham. So TQ Graham, he opened his 21-day window, and not a day too soon, man, because this is a defensive line who, I like the progress of this D-line. I think that it's young. It could use some reinforcements there, but specifically some bigger guys, right? Like this is a unit who just needs some heftier dudes. He would only be the second player on this defensive line that would be over 300 pounds. I think that would help. That would go a long way, especially if you're talking about a rotation that's been, okay against the run. But you can always use a little bit more size. But that just leaves Storm Norton. It leaves Troy Anderson. It leaves Braylon Trice on injured reserve. Troy Anderson on the reserve pup list. No real timetable for those guys. Storm Norton is all three of those guys are eligible to return now because they've sat out the mandatory 4 weeks. But as far as when those next steps could be unfolding, it still remains to be seen. Kira, I see you have another question here, another comment. So it says, national media just want to put us on the spot, and we have to take advantage of it. We especially have to beat the NFC teams. We might tie for a possible wild card. Yes. No, you're exactly right. So you look through the schedule and there are several teams on this schedule, Kira, who, you need to get a win against, right? So obviously you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You need to go back and get some vengeance there. And you need to at least split with the teams that you faced already. So you need to beat the Carolina Panthers. You need to beat, you need to beat the Saints twice. That's just what you need to do. But that's just a bad football team that you need to take advantage of. But again, when I do these prognostications, I like to do a split. I've said that many times, but you really need to go get a win against the Buccaneers. You definitely need to get a win against the Carolina Panthers. But you face a lot of these teams. The Cardinals, the Rams, those are teams that the Seahawks are another one. Those are all really good football teams who you will be facing off with when it comes down to wildcard positioning. So critical spot for you. You got to go out and get a win there. JC730 says we need a Vikings game plan against Buffalo. Just force the run on them and stop the run. Don't let Josh Allen be Superman. Easier said than done, JC. I do tend to agree. You need to be able to run the ball. The best way to beat Josh Allen, though, JC, is to make sure that he doesn't touch the field. It's one of those types of games. Turn around, hand the ball off. I think this is going to be a Tyler Algier game. That's just kind of where my head goes on this one. Turn around, hand the ball off, and just pound the rock. I would love to see a couple of wrinkles here from Zach Robinson in this offense. I don't think that the Bills are going to be able to slow down this rushing attack. And I think that this ultimately turns into a Tyler Algier game where you need to get some momentum and start running downhill and doing everything in that way. Garrett possible, juke and nuke. Keith Robbins comes in and he says, rise up. Thank you, Keith. And Kiara, yeah, juke and nuke. I love that. If they can get some of this downfield passing attack going and potentially run the ball effectively, I think that this could end up being a pretty favorable matchup here for the Falcons. It's just, what does the defense do? This is the first real test of the season, and I really like that. JC says, let's see. I like us against anybody when we play our game. I think that this is a good football team. The roster looks like a playoff roster. You just got to go out and win some of these big ones. You really need to go do that. And I think that this team is talented enough to really give anybody a run for their money. And I think that they could stay in any game or beat any team that they play. It's just about finding that level of consistency. And what does the offense look like coming out of a bye week? What does this defense look like against its biggest test of the season? I think that obviously all remains to be seen. But short podcast here today, folks. Feeling a little under the weather, just for the record, for everybody, just so everyone's aware. But I'm shorter podcast here today. But I appreciate everybody who's jumping in. Thank you so much. I know Scott and Nick, they're going to be coming live here tomorrow morning at 8:30, and they do that every Monday and Wednesday. I do these every Tuesday and Thursday. And again, somebody asked about some advanced analytics. I was more than happy to jump into those. So if you have anything that you want to see, drop a comment, let me know, or hit me up on over on Twitter at GChapATL. We'll be back here on Thursday at 6:00 with our next pod. So make sure, hit that like button, make sure to subscribe, make sure to stay up to date on everything that we have coming out. Give me a follow at GChapATL. Check out all the great content that we have coming out this week, because we're back to a Falcons game week. So you can do that, or you can head over to si.com/NFL/Falcons, get your fix there too. But big thank you to everybody who jumped in. Appreciate all the comments and the questions. My name is Garrett Chapman for Falcons on SI. I'll see you all very soon. But until next time, go Falcons.